Shabbat Shalom. It is Shabbat, and the Lord has had some teaching time with me this morning for sure in Genesis 17. And that is a chapter that deals with circumcision. And it's actually the verses that the rabbis point to as far as the command for circumcision on the 8th day. Now, he had me go through all of the Hebrew just as I have been doing. And so obviously some things were truly eye-opening when I went back through everything in the Hebrew, just about. So I'm going to share with you some of those amazing discoveries. So we are in Genesis 17, and it is just a few verses, 12 through 14. So I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to go through the Hebrew with you, and then I'm going to tell you what the Lord told me. So verses, this is Genesis 17, 12 through 14. And every male among you who is 8 days old shall be circumcised throughout your generations. A servant who is born in the house or who is bought with money from any foreigner who is not of your descendants, a servant who is born in your house or who is bought with your money shall surely be circumcised. Thus shall my covenant be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. But an uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. So, yes, this is actually a very tactful teaching. It's not going to be about the whole cutting of foreskin, but it is going to be very eye-opening, I believe. So I went through the Hebrew with this, and I will just walk through it with you. And every male among you who is 8 days old. Okay, he had me look up 8. I thought, well, surely I know what 8 is. Okay, well, I didn't. Okay, 8 can mean, is actually the root meaning rich, fat, plenteous, to become fat, to be loose, morally loose, a prodigal, gluttonous. Okay, so that is somebody who is fat. And you will see that it's like a picture of them being fat on themselves. It's like they are mighty on themselves. Okay, is 8 days, and this is the word yom, or yom, and it is from 3117 in Strong's. And that is not just a day, but it's any given point. It is a period of time. It can be a year. It's just kind of a general term. And then old, that comes from Strong's 1121. And that is actually the word ben, which means son, builder, adopted child, children in general. So you have this 8 fat, if you will, period of time on a son. Okay, shall be circumcised. Okay, that particular word, circumcised, is from 4135, mul, and that is to cut short, to cut off, to cut down. Shall be circumcised throughout your generations. A servant, he that is born in the house or bought with silver from any stranger who is not of your seed, okay, that's the servant. A servant who is born in the house. Okay, that word house is 1004, and that is the word bet. And that is a house, a court, a daughter. You know, keep in mind, she is the one who brings forth life into the house, the builder. daughter, dwelling, family, temple, or palace. Who is born in the house or who is bought with money or silver from any foreigner, which is an alien, stranger, who is not your descendant, which also means seed. Verse 13, a servant who is born in your house or who is bought with your silver, which is also a picture of judgment. Also think about Yeshua being betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, shall surely be circumcised. Thus my covenant be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. But an uncircumcised, okay, that is from Strong's 6189. And that is the Hebrew word arol. And that means exposed, uncovered, attitude of derision, unclean, impure, corrupted nature, inability to speak effectively, a flawed character, non-entrance into the temple. It's also a picture of the fruit of newly planted trees. That fruit is considered uncircumcised for the first 3 years. Okay, but an uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and that is also the root of uncircumcised, that person comes from 5315, the word nephesh, which is a breathing creature, an inner being with thoughts, emotions, inner being. That person shall be cut off. 3772, to cut, destroy, consume, covenant, from his people. 5971 is people, people of the land. He has broken, 6565, parar, to break, to divide, to frustrate my covenant. Okay, that is a lot. But as I was, what I've kind of made a practice of is going through and reading the verses using just the Hebrew definitions in the verses. And it truly paints a different picture, a deeper picture that is more deep than just the words on a page. You know, you're going deep into the meaning. So what I did was I took these verses, and if you want to follow along with me as I go, I'm again starting in verse 12 and I'm going through 14. I rewrote this just so my mind could get it in like Landra's little paraphrase version, okay? And then the Lord truly spoke to me, so that's what I want to share. So starting in verse 12. And every male among you who is loose, morally fat, a glutton, and that's not about overeating. That's just fat on themselves. A prodigal, in his years as a son or child, shall be cut down, cut short throughout your generations. All your offspring, either one born in the daughter, which I took that to mean Sarah, either one born in the daughter, or bought with silver. Judgment. Yeshua was bought with silver. From anyone, well, he was betrayed with silver. From anyone other than your seed. This servant shall surely be cut down. Then my alliance shall be in your bearers of good news. The word basar that I didn't point out to you, I'm sorry, I neglected that. Basar means a bearer, the root of it is a bearer of good news. It usually means flesh, right? But the root of it is a bearer of good news, or the gospel. Okay, so verse 13, this servant shall surely be cut down. Then my alliance shall be in your bearers of good news as an everlasting covenant. Verse 14, but a flawed character, one offering fruit of a newly planted tree, who is not cut off from his flawed character, uncircumcision, the inner being of that breathing creature shall be cut from the people of the land, for he has divided my covenant, my alliance. So basically, what he is saying is, if the one who bears good news, who is at the point of being fat on themselves, if they are not cut down, they must be removed. If they are not cut down from themselves, truly, to being big on themselves, then they must be cut down, because they are dividing, making false the covenant. He is dividing the covenant. If we do not get to a place of falling to our knees, every knee will bow. So if we do not get to the place of falling to our knees, then we are still living for self. We're still living for the fatness of ourselves. We are not feeding off of Yeshua alone, the bread of life. We're feeding off everything else. And we must be cut down. We must have a contrite heart. That is our offering. So in Jeremiah, it talks of the circumcised heart. And that's really what it's talking about, is the circumcised heart. The circumcision of their flesh, I mean, that was a sign of this covenant. But a circumcised heart is the sign of a covenant as well. I mean, that is the sign of a covenant, is a circumcised heart. So I wanted to read to you in Jeremiah. So we've got a few passages in Jeremiah to read. Jeremiah 17, because in the Old Testament, it talks of the circumcision of heart, circumcision of heart. And I always thought it was just in the New Testament, but no, this is, it's all a heart thing, as our local rabbi says. Okay, so Jeremiah 17, 9 through 10. The heart is more deceitful than all else, and is desperately sick. Who can understand it? I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind, even to give each man according to his ways, according to the results of his deeds. That also reads in Hebrew, the fruit of his doings. So he's looking at our fruit. Is our fruit this new fruit that really is forbidden to be eaten? I mean, it's unclean. You can't just start spouting off stuff right away of information that you have when you are new in the Lord. I mean, He wants you to wait. He wants to really test your heart. So there is truly a testing time that goes on, a pruning time that goes on. I mean, you're a fruit tree. We bear fruit. You know, we're part of the branches of this tree of Yeshua, right? And so He's going to test this fruit. And they deem it unclean for the first few years. Okay, so, and then in Deuteronomy 10, 12 through 16. Okay, he says, "And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God require from you?" So this is what he's looking at the heart. "But to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, and love him, and serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the Lord's commandments and his statutes, which I am commanding you today for your good." Not to make you struggle, for your good and for the kingdom good. Okay, and then Jeremiah 4:4 starts talking about the circumcision of the heart, for circumcision of the heart. Jeremiah 4:4, "Circumcise yourselves to the Lord and remove the foreskins of your heart." And then Colossians. Now we're into the New Testament, and it's talking about the circumcision of our hearts. Colossians, y'all will recognize this verse. Colossians 2, 11 through 15. Okay. "And in him you were also circumcised," cut, "with a circumcision made without hands, in the removal of the body of the flesh by the circumcision," cutting, "of Christ, having been buried with him in baptism, in which you were also raised up with him through faith in the working of God who raised him from the dead. And when you were dead in your transgressions and the uncircumcision of your flesh," fatness, "he made you alive together with him, having forgiven us all our transgressions, having canceled out the certificate of debt," the bill of charges, "consisting of decrees against us, and which was hostile to us, and he has taken out of the way, having nailed it to the cross." He nailed those bill of charges to the cross. Not the commands, the bill of charges. "When he has disarmed the rulers and authorities, he made a public display of them, having triumphed over them through him." So there must be a cutting. There must be a circumcision. And that cutting is identifying with the cutting of Yeshua. He had to bend too. He had to be cut too. And he did it in our stead. So now we identify with him and have been brought near through the blood of Yeshua, his cutting. It's a heart thing. It's always been a heart thing. We must identify with that circumcision. We must be circumcised in heart. I just delight in sharing that with you. I love how you really can't know what the New Testament says until you know what the Tanakh says, the Torah says. The Torah, prophets, writings, scripture. And he revealed it. He reveals it every day. I'm just glad you're along for the journey. Shabbat Shalom. Blessings.